The ILO is working with the government, employers, and trade unions in Sri Lanka, and our overall goal is basically to ensure decent work for all. So we're doing that by supporting the government on labor legislation, we are supporting the capacity of employers, and we're supporting the capacity of trade unions, so they can all play an active role in social dialogue and to improve situation for workers and for businesses in Sri Lanka, and to help Sri Lanka grow, as I said, create decent work for everyone. So the LEAD project is actually been going on for quite a few years. It's focusing in the north. And after the conflict came to an end, you had a large number of smallholder farmers and fishermen, where their traditional networks, access to market, access to finance, has been disrupted by the conflict. So what LEAD did was basically going in and try to help reestablish those networks. And we did that through cooperatives. So if you have a smallholder farmer, it doesn't make sense for a buyer to go all the way out to see if you can buy anything from him. But put him in cooperatives, all of a sudden you have a volume, and it makes it interesting for buyers to go out. It also makes it easier for buyers to tell the farmers what kind of produce they can sell, help them improve the quality, the yield, and all that. And what we've been doing now, the current phase of LEAD, is that we are working very closely with companies from the south, large-scale buyers, and we're looking at them not just to source from the north, but actually develop partnerships, so that the companies are now looking for new produce that they haven't previously sourced from the north, for example, groundnuts. And that's very much helped by the government's policies, the Vista policy, of focusing on domestic production. So rather than importing from India, we are now working with the companies to get smallholder farmers to produce, for example, groundnuts in the north and sell for domestic production. And that means all of a sudden these farmers are, they're making greater income because they're higher quality yield, higher value yield. And the companies don't have to rely on imports. So it's really creating a win-win situation for everyone involved. And what we're doing is that we're gradually increasing the volume up there. So you start with a few farmers, other farmers see this working really well, they're joining in. And by increasing the volume, it also makes it interesting for companies to have production facilities and also processing plants, for example, which then creates employment for other people who don't have access to land or to go to fishing, but all of a sudden they see employment opportunities there through these local factories. So that's basically what we're doing. And then, of course, we're also working with a lot of wonderful groups there to solve the conflict. So we have people with disabilities, we have female-led households. And we're also looking at integrating them into cooperatives, making sure their voices are heard, giving more senior positions in cooperatives, and also ensuring that these other types of employment being created, that they also benefit from that. And that the companies have been very responsive in that regard. It's very positive to see. And then the other point about LEAD is that we see that these mechanisms that we are developing with the private companies are actually becoming quite solid quite quickly. So normally when we have these kind of cooperatives, they're working with them, it takes years to get them up. But we find that within 18 months, we can actually get a relationship between a large-scale buyer from the south and smallholders pretty solid and be able to stand on its own. And that means that our role then is basically just facilitating. And then we step back and because it's a win situation, it continues beyond our involvement. And it also means that this can be replicated elsewhere. So we are looking at how can we support these kind of partnerships to take place in other parts of the country where you have similar situations with smallholder farmers that are caught up in a situation where they can't get the right produce, the kind of inputs, can't get the right fertilizer, don't have access to markets and all that. And how can we facilitate the companies reach out to these farmers, help them get the produce, help them get access to market, and then as I said, create a win-win situation that we've seen in the north. Working with a couple of politicians and parliamentarians, and we are very positive about that. We're looking forward to replicating it in the very near future. So that's really good. I think there's been a number of challenges, of course, and you have issue of infrastructure. It's time-consuming and expensive to transport things up and down from the island, even though it's not that far. You still have issues of trust between the northern communities and the southern communities that we're helping bridge. And you also have, that because of the conflict, I said, these traditional networks were disrupted. So for local farmers to have access to finance when they need it, non-exploitative finance, access to inputs when they need it, kind of things. So that's been a challenge. But we've seen, with relatively limited support, as I said, we actually see where these companies can go in and help support. And while we always have, initial a bit of reluctance amongst the farmers, can we trust this company? Are they going to be honest? All that. We see with the second season, second harvest, we see more farmers joining because, the first ones are actually did the benefit from it. The rumor spreads very quickly and other farmers are looking to sign up. And that's for us a very important indicator of success, that we have farmers that we are not supporting joining the scheme. Right? We help us initially, and then it grows by itself because farmers see an advantage there. And as I said, we want them to. I think, we have benefited a lot from the donors' patience, basically, from the Australian embassy here and Norwegian embassy that have been supporting us. And where we are now would not be possible if we hadn't had the time to develop the network, develop the trust with cooperatives, help build cooperatives, to basically create the foundation on which we're now building. And I think also that what we're seeing is that these projects they do take time, but if in the time you also have tremendous benefits and rewards coming from them. So I think that's really that's our main achievement. Yeah. And also that we see now that you reach a certain level, all of a sudden we're seeing all kinds of things are happening. So creating this foundation initially has been the challenge, but now that we have a solid foundation, all of a sudden all kinds of other things are happening also for the benefit of people and for the people themselves also. Oh yeah, that's a huge drive. People want to make money, right? And people want to have a better future for themselves and for their children. And I think that what we're seeing with the farmers, when they get those opportunities, they're jumping at it. There's a trust issue initially, but once that's overcome, and we see the farmers very keen on engaging with it. I think where the challenge is probably more for the youth that do not want to engage in agriculture, looking for some other kind of employment. And that's where we see, our efforts to create production plants, to create other types of employment there would be beneficial for youth. It's just as a timeline, from you start growing agricultural produce to you have the processing plants. But we remain hopeful that we also create opportunities for youth, basically to keep them in the area rather than moving to the cities looking for employment there, but that they stay put in local communities and benefit. I think, initially we played a very big role in getting the investments in. There was a bit of reluctance to companies, why should we invest in the North? Some had done before and had lots of positive outcomes. So we basically developed as a partnership where we told these companies, if you work with us, we will go half and half. So we will cover half of the investment cost and you cover the other half. So that lowered the risk and made it more attractive financially for them to engage. And our contribution did not go to the company, it went to the local stakeholders, local farmers, in terms of seeds and technical support, whatever. So that really helped overcome that initial obstacle. And once the companies that did initial investments saw the benefits, then they put in more money themselves, so that worked. But clearly, with the ILO's, without the ILO's intervention initially, I doubt a lot of these investments would have taken place at this point in time. Right now, it's being greatly facilitated by the government's Biztalk policy, where companies are actually looking for investment opportunities, etc. But that's changed in the past 2 years. Now, I think what some of the things we're working on is like, it's great to have investments coming up. It's great to see that the farmers can make more money. But what we really need to do is to create an enabling environment for small business. I mean, small business is the generator of employment. That's in Sri Lanka and elsewhere. So we need to create an environment where small businesses have access to the business services, they have access to finance, they have access to land, all this. So they can benefit from, as we now see this agricultural sector developing, becoming more productive, people having more money. So we want to create the environment for small business to benefit from this. So they go in, whether we're talking about acting as a supplier to agricultural sector or to create businesses in other areas. We have employment for youth. We have employment for people who don't have access to land or don't want to engage in agriculture or fisheries. And that's really where I see a strong role for government here to help facilitate that enabling environment, help create opportunities, and as businesses are looking north, facilitate. And we are actually working with the EFC on that. We are working with the local government, trying to address some of these obstacles. We did a study last year on the key bottlenecks that are stopping investments coming from the north. So with that document, we're trying to engage in a dialogue, trying to see this. These are the areas that we can address locally, something have to be addressed nationally. But there's a lot of opportunity there. And we see that after all these years, after the conflict, it's been kind of been maturing up there. And now it's at the breaking point where all of a sudden there's a lot of opportunities, a lot of companies that should be benefiting from this. We're trying to help them to benefit from it. So LEAD is a project. So we're continuing for another couple of years, and then hopefully we've done our job well enough that we do not need it anymore. We have created institutions, we have strengthened them enough that they can take on the role that we are playing, and that the private sector will be solidly anchored in the north. That the services we have been providing will no longer be needed. So that's the aim for LEAD. And I have to say, we're actually quite on track for that. So that's really positive. With regards to the ILO, we are here to stay. So we'll continue our engagement with government, engagement with the employers, the workers, we now see also the impact of COVID, and as the country tried to recover from that. So we're talking about help create employment again in the tourism sector, help address some of the issues of social protection to make sure if we have something similar, that we are better prepared for a second time around. Also help with migrant workers, all those who have returned from the Gulf and elsewhere, help them either to return to work or to integrate into the local economy, find employment. And our overall goal here is to ensure there's decent work for all in Sri Lanka. That's what we're working for, and as we continue to work for. Thank you very much for having me. Thank you.